Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to challenge the story you tell yourself about you. Because if you want a different life, you don't start with willpower or motivation or even setting bigger goals. You start with identity. Every breakthrough you'll ever have begins not with what you want, but with who you believe you are. Most people live their life like a photocopy of their past. Same habits, same reactions, same frustrations. They wake up each morning, look in the mirror, and instead of seeing who they could be, they see a reflection of who they were yesterday. But your past is not a prophecy. Your identity is not a prison. You are not permanently stamped by who you used to be. You can rewrite your identity, and when you do, you rewrite your life. Part 1. Identity drives behavior. Think about it. Every action you take is filtered through the sentence, I'm the kind of person who never finishes things. I'm the kind of person who gains weight easily. I'm the kind of person who gets nervous in front of others. I'm the kind of person who can't make money. The moment you attach I am to something, it becomes your internal script. And your brain, which desperately wants consistency, will do everything in its power to prove that script right, even if it's destroying your dreams. If someone says, I really want to quit smoking, but they identify themselves as a smoker trying to quit, their mind will sabotage them. But if they shift to, I am a healthy person who doesn't put poison in my body, everything changes. Behavior follows identity, not the other way around. Part 2, the lie we tell ourselves, you are not tired, you are unchallenged, you are not unmotivated, you're operating from a story that's too small for the life you were meant to live. You don't need more discipline. You need a new definition of who you are. If you believe you're broken, you will never allow yourself to behave like someone who is capable. If you believe you're unworthy, you will subconsciously sabotage anything that would prove you wrong. You do not rise to your goals. You fall to your identity. Part 3, destroy the old identity. Let's get real. There are beliefs living inside you that are older than your dreams. Some were handed to you by parents who gave you their fears, by teachers who judged your potential, by friends who couldn't see your greatness. Some came from failure, moments where you tried and it didn't work, so you assumed you didn't work. But here is the truth. You are not the same person who failed. You are not the same person who was hurt. You are not the same person who is afraid. You've lived more life. You've gained more wisdom. You've evolved. Stop letting your old identity make decisions for your upgraded self. Today, you declare the death of that old story. Part 4. Install a new identity right now. Finish this sentence. I am the kind of person who give me a version of you that you haven't allowed yourself to become yet. I am the kind of person who keeps promises to myself. I am the kind of person who follows through. I am the kind of person who makes decisions from vision, not fear. Once you decide who you are, your actions must align. Identity shift isn't complicated. It's built with small, consistent votes for the future you. 1 workout equal to vote for I am strong. 1 hour reading equal to vote for I am growing. 1 honest conversation equal to vote for I am courageous. Your new identity is formed in the micro moments no one sees. Over time, those votes stack, and suddenly you wake up one day and the actions are automatic. You don't have to force it anymore. You're just being you. Part 5, the power of future identity. Here's the breakthrough. Stop asking, what do I need to do? Start asking, who do I need to become? Visualize the future you, the one who achieved it all. Ask yourself, how do they speak? How do they walk? How do they react under pressure? What do they tolerate? What do they refuse to tolerate? You already know the answers. There is a version of you that's disciplined, focused, and unstoppable, not because life is easier, but because their identity demands it. When you truly adopt a new identity, the behaviors become effortless. You don't try to wake up early. You wake up early because that's who you are. You don't try to lead. You lead because that's who you are. You don't try to be confident. You are confident because confidence is now your default setting. Part 6. The moment everything changes, there is a single moment, one decision that rewrites the entire narrative of your life. The moment you say, enough, enough shrinking, enough playing small, enough letting an outdated version of you dictate your future. You were born to rewrite the script, to break the cycle, to redesign the identity that shapes your destiny. Say it out loud, even if you whisper it. I choose a new identity today. Because once you choose, the world shifts around you. Final line, closing impact. Your life changes the moment your identity changes. Rewrite your identity, and you will rewrite your life. Identity drives behavior. You don't act according to your goals. You act according to who you believe you are. When people set goals, they usually think the goal itself will change them. They believe that writing it down, saying it out loud, or creating a vision board will suddenly make them transform. But most of the world doesn't fail because of lack of goals. They fail because their internal identity, the story they silently repeat about themselves, does not match the life they desire. You can set the goal of waking up early, building a business, getting in shape, or becoming financially free. But if your identity is still quietly whispering, I'm not disciplined, or I've never been good with money, then your actions will always align with the identity, not the goal. Your brain has one dominant mission: to stay consistent with who you believe you are. If you see yourself as someone who procrastinates, your brain will work hard to protect that identity. Even if it harms you, it will feed you excuses. It will inflate distractions. It will justify inaction, not because you're weak, but because your subconscious mind values familiarity over progress. Familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar potential. That's how powerful identity is. It acts as the thermostat of your life. No matter how high you turn up the goal-setting temperature, you will settle back to the level of your identity if you don't change it. Think about someone who tries to quit smoking. One person says, I'm trying to quit. The other says, I don't smoke anymore. Same action, different identity. The first person still sees themselves as a smoker who is trying. The second person has already shifted identity. And that identity instantly pulls new behaviors into alignment. When identity shifts, behavior becomes automatic. You don't need motivation to be who you believe you are. If your identity is, I'm not a morning person, no matter how many alarms you set, you'll hit snooze. If your identity is, I'm a disciplined person who values my mornings, you wake up even when you don't feel like it. Because your actions rise or fall to match the identity you've accepted. People tend to believe that habits shape identity. In reality, identity shapes habits first. Every time you say, this is just who I am, you lock in behaviors that keep you there. Your identity becomes the ceiling of your potential. You might want something desperately. You might read books, journal about it, visualize it, talk about it. But if you attach identity to limitation, you will always return to old patterns. It's not lack of ability, it's misaligned identity. Human beings hate being inconsistent with their identity. If you believe I'm shy and I don't speak up, you'll avoid opportunities that could expose you, not because you can't speak, but because speaking contradicts your identity. If you believe I'm bad at relationships, you will subconsciously sabotage any relationship that starts to look successful, just to stay consistent with the identity. If you believe I'm unlucky, you will ignore opportunities right in front of you and even push them away because they don't match your internal narrative. Whatever identity you hold, you will defend it, even the painful ones. Identity is the greatest source of power when aligned with your potential, and the greatest source of self-destruction when built on fear. The fastest way to change your behavior is not through discipline. Discipline is temporary. Identity is permanent. When you identify as an athlete, exercising isn't willpower, it's who you are. When you identify as a leader, communication isn't scary. You speak because leaders lead. When you identify as someone who follows through, action becomes the natural expression of identity, not a struggle. Your identity is the script. Behavior is just the performance, the story you tell yourself. Internally is more powerful than any external circumstance. Most people don't realize that the identity they're living from wasn't chosen, it was inherited, it came from parents who projected limitations based on their own fear. Teachers who defined ability by grades and compliance, society which rewards fitting in rather than standing out. Some identities were formed during moments of failure. You didn't fail a test. You accepted the identity, I'm not smart. You didn't get the job. You accepted the identity, I'm not capable. You weren't rejected by someone. You accepted the identity, I'm not enough. And once that identity was installed, every action that followed was proof reinforcing it. The truth is, identity is not who you are. Identity is who you decided you were at some moment in the past, usually without awareness. And most people are living as a past version of themselves because they never consciously updated the identity. They grew, learned, changed, evolved, but kept the same label. A new level of life requires a new identity to lead it. You can only achieve the goals of the identity you hold. A goal for a future version of you cannot be achieved with the mindset of your past self. If you want to transform your life, start speaking identity into existence. Instead of saying, I want to be confident, declare, I am confident. Instead of saying, I'm trying to be disciplined, declare, I am a disciplined person. Identity is not earned through perfection, it's claimed through repetition. Every action, even the smallest one, is a vote for a new self. When you choose to read instead of scroll, that's a vote for I am someone who invests in my growth. When you choose to walk instead of staying on the couch, that's a vote for I am someone who honors my body. When you choose to have the uncomfortable conversation, That's a vote for I am someone who chooses truth over comfort. You don't need to become the identity completely before you start acting like it. The actions build evidence. The evidence strengthens belief. The belief becomes identity. And once identity is locked, behavior becomes effortless. The moment you stop negotiating with your old identity, everything changes. The moment you stop saying, this is just how I am, you remove the chains. The moment you understand that goals are temporary, but identity is eternal, your life begins to shift. The moment you choose a new identity, you've already begun becoming it. Identity drives behavior, not motivation, not inspiration. Identity. Rewrite the identity, and the behavior rewires itself. Your past identity is not your destiny. Release old labels and rewrite the story you live by. Most people don't realize how much of their life is directed by labels they never consciously chose. Labels handed to them when they were young. Labels created from pain, mistakes, or a moment of embarrassment. Labels assigned by others who never understood their potential. A single comment from a parent, a teacher, a boss, or a friend becomes the identity they carry into adulthood. You're irresponsible. You're lazy. You're not leadership material. You're not good with money. These words lodge themselves into the subconscious, and slowly you begin to live them out. Not because they're true, but because repetition turns suggestion into identity. Your past identity is a mirror of where you've been, not a map of where you're going. The tragedy is not that people are stuck, but that they believe they have to stay stuck. You are not obligated to carry your past into your future. The person you were 5 years ago, 5 months ago, or 5 minutes ago is not the person you must be tomorrow. The identity that once protected you may now be the identity that limits you. When you were younger, maybe being quiet protected you. Maybe being invisible kept you safe. Maybe not trying helped you avoid rejection. But now, those same strategies are cages. What once defended you is now holding you back. Identity is formed when a moment becomes a meaning. Something painful happened, and instead of seeing it as an experience, you made it a definition. A failure became proof that you are a failure. A rejection became proof that you are unworthy. A mistake became proof that you are not capable. When you attach identity to your wounds, you allow the past to direct your future. But the truth is, identity is not found in the event. Identity is found in the interpretation. You do not suffer from the event itself, but from the story you told yourself about what the event meant about you. You can rewrite that meaning. You can upgrade the narrative. You can choose a new definition. People change their circumstances all the time, but nothing truly shifts until they change their identity. You can change where you live, who you're with, what you do for work, how much money you make. None of it will matter if you still carry the same internal story. The same identity will recreate the same patterns. If you believe you are powerless, even opportunities will look like obstacles. If you believe you are unworthy, success will make you uncomfortable. You will sabotage it just to prove the story right. The familiar story feels safer than the unfamiliar future. It's not that people fear change, it's that they fear losing the identity that tells them who they are. Even if the identity hurts, at least it's known. Familiar problems feel safer than unfamiliar possibility. You tell yourself, at least I know who I am here. But that version of you is only one possibility, not the truth. There are infinite versions of you waiting to exist. Versions with more confidence, more clarity, more courage, more discipline. You don't discover those versions. You create them by stepping into a story that empowers you rather than diminishes you. The biggest prison is the belief that you can't change. The bars are made of the words, "This is just who I am." Those words lock destiny. When someone says, "I'm not a confident person," what they really mean is, I haven't practiced confidence enough to feel comfortable with it. When someone says, "I always quit," what they really mean is, I have a habit of quitting, but I have the power to create a new habit. Your identity is not fixed, it is flexible. It evolves with every choice you make. Every action you take that contradicts your old identity weakens it. Every action you take that aligns with your future identity strengthens it. You must be intentional about releasing the labels that don't serve you. You must let go of the story that keeps you small. People cling to limiting identities because they don't know who they would be without them. If you've been the shy one, who are you when you speak up? If you've always been the broke one, who are you when you start earning? If you've identified as the one who gets hurt, who are you when you choose vulnerability again? Letting go of the old identity requires courage. It requires stepping into uncertainty, but uncertainty is where growth lives. You don't become the next version of yourself by clinging to the last version. There is a moment when you must separate the event from your identity. You failed, but you are not a failure. You were rejected, but you are not rejectable. You were hurt, but you are not broken. The event happened, but the identity is optional. Your past prepared you. It shaped you. It taught you, but it does not get to define you. You are not the story someone else wrote for you. You are the author now. You decide how you show up. You decide what you believe. You decide what narrative leads your life. To release the old identity, you must stop justifying it, stop defending it, stop trying to prove it. People cling to their limitations like they are precious because those limitations give them predictability. Predictability feels safe, but it also keeps you small. Instead of saying, this is just how I am, begin asking, is this who I choose to be? Choice is the doorway to transformation. The moment you realize identity is a choice, your entire life opens. Your future requires a new identity to lead it. You must wake up and allow yourself permission to evolve. There's a version of you that's bold, a version that takes action without overthinking, a version that pursues dreams without asking for approval, a version that doesn't settle for the life that is comfortable, but builds the life that is meaningful. That version already exists within you. You meet that version every time you choose courage instead of fear. You meet that version every time you choose growth over comfort. You meet that version every time you refuse to let the past define what you deserve. Your past identity was built from survival. Your future identity must be built from intention. You are not here to repeat history. You are here to invent destiny. Small, consistent actions are votes for your new identity. Every choice reinforces who you are becoming. Transformation is not triggered by one massive, dramatic moment. It is built through small decisions repeated consistently. People wait for motivation, inspiration, or a lightning bolt breakthrough, thinking that one big step will change everything. But real change is not born from intensity. It's born from consistency. The smallest choices, the micro habits, the tiny commitments you keep to yourself are the ones that shape your identity. Every time you make a decision that aligns with who you want to become, you cast a vote for that identity. Every time you take an action that contradicts the old story, you chip away at it. Your identity is not built by what you say you want. It's built by what you repeatedly do. When someone says, I want to be fit, but chooses to sleep in instead of exercising, that vote reinforces their existing identity. I am someone who avoids discipline. When someone says, I want to be financially free, but avoids learning about money, that vote reinforces the identity of confusion. On the other hand, even a 5-minute walk, a single push-up, or reading 2 pages of a book casts a vote for a new identity. It may feel small, but it's significant. You don't need to overhaul your life. You just need momentum. Tiny actions are easier to repeat, easier to trust, and easier to stack over time. Big action requires motivation. Small action requires a decision. Most people overestimate what they can do in a week and underestimate what they can build in a year. They try to rebuild their whole life overnight, and when they can't sustain that level of intensity, they quit. The problem is not ability or desire. The problem is that they expect transformation to feel dramatic. Identity change is not dramatic. It's gradual. It forms quietly through the accumulation of consistent behavior. When you choose one small action and you show up daily, even when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable, you prove something to yourself. You prove that you are becoming someone who follows through. A tiny victory strengthens trust. Trust builds identity. Consistency is the evidence of identity. If you identify as someone who cares about health, you move your body. If you identify as someone who values growth, you read and learn. If you identify as someone disciplined, you do the uncomfortable thing even when your feelings resist. But you don't start with identity. Identity grows from repeated action. The action becomes the proof. Proof becomes belief. Belief becomes identity, and identity becomes destiny. Most people want the identity first. They want to feel confident before they show up. They want to feel motivated before they act. They want the belief before the evidence. But the evidence only comes from doing the work. Every time you choose the action that aligns with your future, you are telling your mind, this is who we are now. The power is not in the size of the action, but in the consistency. 5 minutes of discipline every day beats 3 hours of motivation once a month. A single page written every day will finish a book faster than waiting for inspiration. A tiny daily investment will change your financial life faster than one impulse of excitement. Consistency is not glamorous, but it is unstoppable. The world celebrates the result, but the result is just a reflection of those hidden votes. Small actions matter because they accumulate. Identity is shaped like compound interest. One action feels insignificant on its own, but repeated daily it becomes unstoppable. A drop of water means nothing, but drops repeated over time can carve through stone. Your life works the same way. You don't need to force transformation. You need to make space for repetition. The moment action becomes a habit, it becomes automatic. And once it becomes automatic, Identity shifts effortlessly. People often say, I need motivation. No, you need evidence. Motivation fades. Evidence sticks. Discipline doesn't require emotion. It requires alignment. When you show up consistently, even when you don't feel like it, you prove to yourself that feelings no longer control you. You teach yourself that the standard you move from is not how you feel in the moment, but who you are becoming. Most people let their emotions dictate their actions, but when identity leads, action follows regardless of emotion. Consistency creates self-trust. Self-trust is the foundation of confidence. Confidence does not come from achievements. It comes from keeping promises to yourself. Every time you do what you said you would do, you reinforce the identity of someone who is reliable, responsible, capable. Every time you break a promise to yourself, you reinforce the identity of someone who is inconsistent. Confidence is the relationship you have with yourself. If you can't trust yourself, why would you believe you can accomplish anything meaningful? Trust is built through follow-through. Your life doesn't change when you set a goal. It changes when you commit to daily actions that align with the identity required to achieve that goal. A goal without consistency is a fantasy. Consistency without identity is exhausting. But when identity and consistency merge, progress becomes effortless. The moment you start saying, this is what I do, instead of I hope I can, everything shifts. The action stops feeling optional. It becomes part of who you are. Transformation begins with a single choice. When you face a decision, scroll or learn, sleep or rise, comfort or growth, that moment is not just about the action. It is a vote for the identity you're reinforcing. Every time you choose growth, you weaken the old self. Every time you choose discipline, you strengthen the new one. You are training your identity with every decision. This is the truth. You become what you repeatedly do, not occasionally, consistently. Your future self is not waiting for a grand transformation. Your future self is waiting for you to start casting votes. Not tomorrow, today. Once you understand that small actions are identity shaping, you stop waiting for motivation. You stop negotiating with excuses. You stop trying to feel ready. You simply act, because every action shapes who you are becoming, and who you are becoming matters more than any goal you set. Your future identity is the compass. Don't ask what to do, ask who you need to become. Most people chase action, not identity. They obsess over how do I do it, instead of who would do it. They create lists, strategies, and detailed plans, but they skip the most important step, becoming the type of person who naturally follows through. Behavior follows identity. If you act from the same identity that created your current results, you will repeat the same patterns no matter how many changes you attempt. If you're focused on the actions without shifting the identity that drives them, your efforts will always feel like a struggle because you're trying to behave like someone you don't yet see yourself as. But when you adopt the identity of the person who already lives the life you want, you stop forcing behavior and start embodying it. Your future identity is the version of you who already achieved the results you're after. That version is not blocked by self-doubt. That version doesn't hesitate. That version isn't weighed down by old fears. When you step into that identity mentally before the results appear physically, you shift everything. You stop waiting for circumstances to align. You start operating from a higher standard. Decision-making becomes clearer because now your decisions are not based on your feelings, your fears, or your past patterns. They're based on who you choose to be. Instead of asking, what should I do? The question becomes, how would the future version of me show up right now? That one question eliminates confusion. If the future version of you is confident, you don't wait to feel confident to act confidently. You act confidently because that's the identity you're choosing. Confidence is not something you earn at the finish line. Confidence is something you practice at the starting line. If the future version of you is disciplined, you don't wait for motivation. You do the actions disciplined people do. And discipline becomes part of who you are. If the future version of you is financially stable, you don't wait to have money to start managing your finances. You adopt the habits that financially responsible people live by, and eventually your life catches up. Identity precedes result. You don't get the identity after the outcome. You get the outcome because of the identity. The world teaches you to focus on goals. Goals matter, but identity is stronger. A goal is something you want. Identity is something you are. People often set goals from a place of inadequacy. They look at what they lack and decide the goal from that place. I need to lose weight. I need more money. I need more confidence. When you set goals from the belief that something is missing, the identity underneath the goal remains rooted in lack. You're trying to change on the outside while still feeling unworthy on the inside. A person who believes I'm not good enough can achieve incredible things and still feel like a fraud because the identity never shifted. The future identity doesn't operate from scarcity. It operates from alignment. Your future identity gives you direction. It's like having a built-in compass. When you act from your current identity, decisions are filtered through insecurity, fear, self-doubt, and limitation. When you act from your future identity, decisions are filtered through clarity, confidence, courage, and vision. The difference is not in the action, it's in the consciousness you bring to the action. The same action done from a different identity produces a completely different outcome. One person goes to the gym to try to change their body. Another goes because they already see themselves as an athlete. One person posts content hoping for approval. Another posts because they already believe their voice matters. Identity is the silent driver behind every decision. It's easy to get lost in overthinking when you don't know who you are becoming. Overthinking is a symptom of identity confusion. When you know who you are, decisions become simple, not easy, but simple. The future identity makes choices based on vision, not on emotion. The current identity waits to feel ready. The future identity acts, and readiness reveals itself. Waiting to feel ready is a trap. Action is what generates readiness. People think courage precedes action, but action is what builds courage. To tap into your future identity, you must start asking different questions instead of asking, what do I do to be successful? Ask, who is the version of me that is already successful? Then live like that person. Instead of asking, how do I stop procrastinating? Ask, who is the version of me that doesn't procrastinate? Then act like that person. Rather than asking, how do I become confident enough to speak up? Ask, who is the version of me that speaks up naturally? Then show up from that identity. Every time you ask the who question, you activate the part of your brain that looks for behaviors aligned with that identity. It's not pretending to be someone else. It's accessing the highest version of yourself. Your future identity already exists in your mind. You've seen glimpses of it. Every time you imagined your goals becoming reality, every time you had a moment of courage, every time you surprised yourself with what you were capable of, that version of you is not a fantasy. It's a possibility waiting for commitment. The reason you admire qualities in others is because those qualities already exist within you in seed form. You couldn't recognize a trait. In others, if you didn't have it within you when you imagine your future self. Don't just visualize outcomes, visualize behaviors. See how you walk into a room, hear how your voice sounds. When you speak with certainty, feel how grounded you are in your decisions. Visualization is not a dream, it is mental rehearsal. Your brain cannot distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. When you repeatedly visualize yourself acting from your future identity, you train your mind and nervous system for that level of being. Most people let their past self decide what they are capable of. You must let your future self make the decisions. Every time you face a choice, comfort or growth, you have the chance to align with your future identity. When you choose growth, you borrow power from your future self. And every time you make that choice, even in the smallest moments, your future identity becomes more real and your current identity begins to dissolve. The shift is subtle at first. The choices feel small, but eventually something inside you changes. You begin to feel different. You begin to think differently. You begin to act differently. And then one day you look in the mirror and realize you are no longer trying to become that person. You are that person. Your identity determines your direction. Your direction determines your destiny. When you lead with identity, the actions fall into place. Your future identity is not something you chase. It is something you embody. And when you embody it, the world begins to respond to you differently. Opportunities appear. People treat you differently. Circumstances shift, not because the world has changed, but because you did. Transformation starts the moment you say enough. The decision to change identity changes everything. There is a moment in every person's life when something inside them snaps, not in anger, but in certainty. A moment when the excuses lose their power, when the story stops making sense, when the weight of staying the same finally becomes heavier than the effort required to change. Some people call it rock bottom, some call it awakening. But in truth, it's the moment you say with absolute clarity, I'm done living like this. That moment is the ignition point of transformation. Change doesn't begin when you learn more information, read another book, or watch another motivational video. Change begins when you emotionally decide that what you've tolerated is no longer acceptable. People tolerate far too much from themselves. They tolerate procrastination. They tolerate inconsistency. They tolerate fear dictating their decisions. They tolerate a life that feels predictable but unfulfilling. They say things like, it's just who I am, or this is how things are. But nothing changes until you stop tolerating what is keeping you small. The standards you accept determine the life you live. The most powerful shift is not external, it's internal. It's the moment when you look yourself in the mirror and realize that you are the only one who can change your life. No one is coming to rescue you. No one is going to force you to evolve. No one is going to push you past your limits. The responsibility is yours. When you declare enough, your subconscious mind takes it seriously. The identity that once felt comfortable begins to feel suffocating. A new internal tension forms. You can't go back to ignoring your potential because now you've acknowledged it. Once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. You start noticing the ways you betray your future self. You recognize the moments when you choose comfort over growth. You feel uncomfortable when your actions don't match the identity you want to embody. That discomfort is not punishment, it's progress. It means the old identity is losing its grip. People think transformation takes time. Time is not what creates change. Decision creates change. Time only reflects the results of that decision. You can struggle for years trying to change your habits, but the moment you make a non-negotiable decision, change accelerates. The difference between I want to change and I refuse to live like this anymore is everything. Wanting allows room for negotiation. Refusing pushes you into action. A lukewarm intention creates lukewarm results. A powerful decision creates powerful transformation. Look at any meaningful change in your life. You didn't ease into it. You decided. Sometimes the decision was loud, sometimes it was quiet, but in both cases it was absolute. You ended a toxic relationship, not because someone gave you a script, but because you reached your breaking point. You changed a habit, not because you read the perfect article, but because something in you said, I can't continue like this. The decision is what creates the momentum. You don't need to know how you'll change. You just need to decide that you will, the moment you commit, the path begins to reveal itself. Life responds to commitment. Opportunities that were invisible suddenly appear. Solutions that felt out of reach become obvious. People who can help you start showing up. Climate shifts, not because the world has changed, but because your identity has changed. When you decide to become someone new, you stop waiting for permission and start creating possibility. Identity shifts through decisive action. The moment you draw the line between who you were and who you are becoming, behavior aligns automatically. If you decide, I'm done making excuses, your brain begins searching for ways to hold you accountable. If you decide, I am finished settling for less, your standards rise. If you decide, I am becoming the strongest version of myself, every choice starts to reflect that intention. You don't need to convince yourself anymore. You live the decision. People fear making that decision because it carries responsibility. Once you say enough, there's no hiding behind the story anymore. You can't blame your upbringing, your past, your circumstances, or your feelings. Saying enough means stepping into personal power. It means choosing growth over comfort. It means choosing discipline over excuses. It means showing up even when you don't feel ready. Most people never transform because they prefer familiar pain over unfamiliar possibility. They would rather stay in the discomfort they know than risk stepping into a life they haven't experienced yet. But the discomfort of staying the same eventually becomes unbearable. And that's when transformation begins. True change is not painful. Staying stuck is painful. Ignoring your potential is painful. Believing you are less than who you were born to be is painful. Change is liberation. Change is relief. Change is returning to alignment with your potential. When your identity shifts, your habits shift. When your habits shift, your results shift. When your results shift, your life shifts. It all starts with that internal declaration. I choose differently. The moment you decide I am done, something inside you straightens, your energy changes, you start speaking with conviction instead of confusion, you start acting with intentionality instead of hesitation, you begin to respect yourself more, you stop breaking promises to yourself, you stop tolerating behaviors that contradict the person you want to become. Transformation requires one thing more than anything else: personal standards, not preferences, standards. A preference says, I want things to change. A standard says, I will not accept anything less than this. Preferences are hopeful, standards are non-negotiable. Personal standards define your identity more than any affirmation will. If your standard is, I don't miss workouts, then you don't miss them. If your standard is, I speak the truth, then you speak it. If your standard is, I honor my commitments, then your actions reflect that. The reason a strong decision creates identity change is because a decision destroys the exit door. When you fully commit, you remove the option to go back. Most people fail not because they aren't capable, but because they keep the escape route open. They tell themselves they'll try. Trying is the language of hesitation. Deciding is the language of identity. When you decide, you stop negotiating. You don't have to know how. The entire journey will unfold. You only need to take the first step from a place of certainty instead of fear. Action taken from uncertainty creates doubt. Action taken from identity creates momentum. Momentum is the force that breaks old patterns. Once momentum begins, the identity shift becomes almost inevitable. You can't stop what you've already embodied. The moment you say enough, your past loses power. The identity that once limited you begins to dissolve. The future version of you steps forward. Not because the world changed, but because you did.